Hello and welcome to this, our 244th live stream. Romani ite Domum. Romans go home. Of course, we are doing a series right now, a Bible study on the book of Romans for our Monday period, our Monday videos. So we invite you to have a listen to those after the live stream. We want to thank you all for joining us tonight. It's been another exciting week. Our channel business is going to concern Reliquary of the Dead, which in Monday's mail got the Outstanding Creator Award medal. Okay, we will move this up to the camera. Woo, woo, woo. This is producers looking at me like I got 10 heads. It's got actually a neck strap so you can wear it. So there it is, me wearing it. I won't bite it. Okay. Yes, so this one actually came with a physical medal. So that is super cool. Not all book awards do. Some are just reputation alone. Just the thrill of winning it, but this one actually came with a medal, and that's those ones that come with medals are super cool. Medals and trophies. Those are the coolest book contests. So because then you got something physical there to show, say, year after year. Okay, Gryffindor confirmed. Hey, they would be really unhappy to have me in Gryffindor. I'll just say. Screenshot? Okay, well, maybe. Ryan Cohen Camp. No, he's Catholic. Is red and orange a Catholic color? Maybe. Maybe in Ireland, I don't know. Okay, so that's our channel business for today. And if, again, that was the book award that I got for Reliquary of the Dead. If you haven't read this already, please do so and leave a review on Amazon and Goodreads. It really helps us to for you guys to leave book reviews. We do have, we are on the cusp of getting book 3 out. So book 3 should be starting to appear in stores for pre-order. Okay, so this is seriously cool. Okay, so that's the channel business. We'll get to the rules here and then start taking your questions. The rules are same as always. Super chats have priority. We take non-super chat questions, but you have to preference it with a Q and a colon. You don't preface it with that, we don't see it. If you post non-super chats, only post your question once. Posting it multiple times will lead for that question to be disqualified for the night. If it's a verse, if it's something to do with the Bible, we do need context. So we will need what book it's from, chapter and verse. That just helps us find things quicker. We also ask that if you do sponsor a super chat, you copy the question into the super chat so we don't have to go hunting for it. That just makes life a lot easier for us. And finally, we ask that when you post your question, only one question per chat. No question stacking. It's just not fair to others. So, with that said, let's get into the questions. Mama says, seriously, congrats, Doc. Well, thank you. That's, as I said, it's so cool to actually receive a real medal. Something, as I said, real and tangible, not just a electronic certificate. So that was really cool. Okay. Our first question here is from the Dude, and he asks, when I can see it here, there's no external evidence of the Star of Bethlehem as stated in Matthew. Should we take this as allegorical? No, we shouldn't. What we should take this as is astrological. Now, what we're going to do at some point is a video on astrology in the ancient world, because it doesn't quite work the way we would expect. So when they say they see a star in the east, it's a star in conjunction with something. There is a lot of these mentioned in ancient literature. In fact, there's a whole treatise from Assyrian sources on astrological observations. In fact, Joshua 10, where you have the sun standing in the sky, is an astrological observation. So, so just because there isn't anything extraordinary happening in the sky from, say, our point of view or our vantage point, doesn't mean that an astrologer wouldn't see something that's worth noting. So, so even if you could sort of wind back the clock to 4 BC in Bethlehem and looked up in the sky and saw a perfectly ordinary night, an astrologer might look up and see something different. Something where there's a conjunction somewhere where they're going, hey, this is really unusual. We need to pursue this. So we have to take that whole external evidence thing with a kind of proverbial grain of salt, because, say, astrology doesn't work the same way as, say, astronomy. It's a category error. You're using astronomical methods to try to determine something astrological. Not the same. So you can't use astronomy to discount astrology. So it's just one of those category errors, and I just think it should not drive you to allegory. Just there's a different method going on here. Okay. Ryan Cohenkamp. So astrology isn't entirely fake? Oh, astrology was considered to be an entire predictive science. Back before, say, Newton. You talk about astrology any time before Newton, and people thought it was a legitimate science. Now, do I think it's a legitimate science? No. But a lot of cultures did. Say like for example, the Lutheran reformer Melanchthon. He thought astrology was a legitimate science. He believed heavily in astrology. Most of the ancient world believed in astrology. It doesn't necessarily give it credibility, but it is what people believed. It's more of a, let's say, it's not a prescriptive thing. It's not saying that astrology is true. It's just more a descriptive thing, where some astrologer saw a sign in the sky and pursued it, believing what he believed about it. It's a recording of what they actually believed, not so much what was actually observed. Okay? So, hope that helps. Thank you for the question. Really appreciate that. Broken clock? Yeah, could be. You could use a broken clock analogy here. That a broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah. Keeps learning. Can it be said that astrology and astronomy were conflated then? Yeah, back then you'd say that. There was no astronomy back then, though. Well, let's just be clear about that. There really wasn't astronomy because they didn't know what planets were. They didn't know what stars really were. So astrology was what filled the place of astronomy. Okay, let's move on to the next question here. Next question here is from Dartblade. Did elephants, rhinos, and cheetahs once roam the Near East? Asking because all three appear both in farther east parts of Asia and Africa. Okay. Rhinos, not so much. Africa, yeah. The rhino was in Africa. It seems to be only, apart from its sort of, there were versions of the rhino that were all over Asia and Africa at some point. and even North America. There was even a North American species of rhino at one point, but all of those died out by the Pleistocene. So, um, really, by the time you get into the Anthropocene period, the Holocene period, you're really talking about the rhino being confined to Africa at that point. There might have been some small groups in India, but that would have been about it. Elephants were all the way across. Various subspecies of elephant were all across Africa and Asia. Cheetahs, cheetahs were only confined to Africa as far as we know. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any cheetah that gone beyond Africa or even North Africa as such. They seem to have been confined to the southern regions of Africa. So, hope that helped. Thank you for the super chat, or the question. The third non-super chat here is from Darkblade. Do you support the shorter 10 to 11 year or the longer 14 to 15 year reign of Seti I? Okay, this one is weird. I support the 14 to 15 year reign. Okay, now here's the weirdness of this. There's a weirdness to the 10 to 11 year view, and I just don't buy it. The idea is that Seti I actually reigned 15 years, 14 to 15 years, but that last 4 years was a co-regency with Ramses II, and Ramses II used that co-regency and padded his 66-year reign with that co-regency. Okay? That's not the way co-regencies work. Just saying. You don't get to take years of your father's reign to add it to your reign. I've always been uncomfortable with that view. It's so nobody is really contesting that Seti reigned 14 to 15 years. The only question is, did it overlap 4 years with the reign of Ramses II? I would say no. I definitely take the position that it doesn't make sense to have a 4-year co-regency with Ramses II, and then Ramses II steals that four years and adds it to his own reign. So, not buying that. Just saying. So, yeah, I would go with a 14 to 15 year reign, and I think that's I think that's the only thing that makes sense. If anything, when there is a co-regency, what usually happens is the father gets the full credit for his reign, and then the son may add those years to his reign, but not at the expense of his father's reign. So that's more normal. But this whole idea of Seti I and Ramses II were co-regents, and Ramses II steals that 4 years and adds it to his own, while cheating dad. No, that's not the way co-regencies work. Just saying. Yeah, so so that's where I'd fall on this issue. I think the shorter reign doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't fit in with the pattern of say normal Egyptian co-regencies. Okay. Let's see. Was there anything else here for non-super chats that I want to take? I'll take this one from Gizbo, and then we'll start moving on to the regular questions. Or sorry, the super chats. Gizbo SBOL asks the non-super chat here. How would you respond to the early data argument that the toponyms in Exodus 14:2 existed in earlier periods, but relevant texts preserving them haven't survived. Well, let's pull up the Bible here and let's see what 14:2 says. Okay. Exodus. (14). Okay, tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp before Pi-hahirot, between Migdol and the sea. You shall camp in front of Baal-Zephon, opposite to it and the sea. Okay. Now, the sea is probably is an undisputed old toponym. No one disputes it. Pi-hahirot, Migdol, and Baal-Zephon. Those are the ones at issue. Now, in the case of Pi-hahirot and Baal-Zephon, yeah, that's possible. They might have been earlier and the text didn't exist to support them. The problem with Migdol, though, is Migdol is actually ascribed to certain kings as having built it. There was a big Migdol of Seti I. There was a Migdol of Ramses II. There was a Migdol of, I think one other king of Shoshank, I believe, also did a Migdol. Okay. Now, the problem here is that there wasn't any Migdol that was a predecessor to Seti I. So, but there's the problem here with that whole text surviving thing. Now they narrow it down to 14:2, okay? But there's other toponyms here in the Exodus account that cannot be in any way justified by archaeological lack of preservation. Okay, lack of archaeological preservation. Like Pithom, like Ramses. Okay, those are two that are not just specific to a certain time, but a certain circumstance. Like, for example, Ramses is the circumstance there is the building of the capital, P. Ramses, by Ramses II. And we know this from Papyrus Anastasi III, because the name used Ramses for Ramses is the name of Ramses II. It's the name is unique to Ramses II. You couldn't use that. You couldn't say, well, that could apply to Ramses I. No, it can't. It can't apply to Ramses III. It can't even apply to Ramosa, because the whole name of the city is Pi Usur Ma'are Setep Enre Ramesses Meri Amun. That is the whole titulary of Ramses II. That's the name of the city. That's his full name. Ramses is an abbreviation. So, there is absolutely no way that the name Ramses could exist in an earlier period because of what the full name of the city actually is. You'd have to be an Egyptologist to know that. So there's no way that could be. But even Pithom, Pithom, that Piatum, that was done under a specific historical circumstance. That naming was done by Ramses II when he built a temple of Atum at Cheku. Prior to that, it was just called Cheku. So there was no name Pithom prior to Ramses II because he hadn't built the temple. Without him building the temple, that name wouldn't exist. So you can only go so far to say, okay, that these arguments that, okay, text preserving them haven't survived, that will only take you so far. But then you're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit a wall when, say, historical events make that impossible. So, Darkblade. my redacta cadabra. Redacta cadabra. Ah, boy. Keeps learning. That was a mouthful. Well, yeah. I mean, it's the name of a king. Kings have long names. There's that's why it's good to be king. You get to have a long name. Okay. So, take that off here. But so yeah, that's the reason why this doesn't work ultimately. Yeah, it will work for some of two of the toponyms in Exodus 14:2. It might be a plausible explanation. It's not a plausible explanation for Migdal, and certainly not a plausible explanation for Pithom or Ramses. So again, you're just gonna hit a wall with that argument, because I mean, if what you're trying to do is cherry pick the data right down to Exodus 14:2, you might have a chance with this argument. But once you start engaging the fuller text of Scripture, this whole thing falls apart. So, hope that helps. Thank you for the question. Really appreciate it. Okay. All right, let's move on to the Super Chats. Super Chats! Okay, our first Super Chat is from AEIO. AEUIO for €11. Thank you for the Super Chat. Hey, Dr. Falk. Why did Samson and the Prince of Shechem depend upon their fathers to arrange their marriages? Judges 14:3 and Genesis 34:4. Was it a political status thing or related to exonomy somehow? The answer is because first marriages were always arranged by your parents. That's always how it worked in the ancient Near East. Second marriages weren't. Second marriages, you were up to the individual to arrange. But a first marriage for just about anyone was arranged by their parents. In fact, it was seen as sort of the height of irresponsibility for a parent to not make a good marital match for their children. Like, today we just say, okay, kids, just figure out dating yourself and choose badly and get yourself a quick divorce. Okay, but that wasn't seen as proper parenting in the ancient world. Okay? Proper parenting in the ancient world was you found your child a good spouse to go out and help them in the big bad world out there. Okay? That was considered to be proper parenting back then. Okay? So arranged marriages were not just about political politics or status, although sometimes it did involve that. I mean, there's no doubt it involved that, especially in upper class marriages. Upper class and wealthy marriages, politics and status was a thing. But all classes did this. Even farming classes, farmers and, say, laborer classes, even they did arrange marriages for their children. This was just seen as the proper thing to do for your children. Darkblade. So even if you're 45, your first marriage will still be arranged by mom and more primarily dad?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Now, if your parents are both dead, no. Okay. If you outlive your parents, no. But if your parents were still alive, probably yes. And they probably are just really unhappy at that point that you're still single. Okay? Really, really unhappy that you're still single. They probably tried at that point a dozen times to get you married. You just keep messing it up. So absolutely, yeah. If you're in your 40s and you're not married, you're a problem.
I mean, the whole purpose of life.
Yeah. So, no. Personal happiness was not even considered to be a. It wasn't even consideration for marriage back then. So, yeah, if you were still in your 40s and you weren't married, yeah, your parents were not happy with you. You were a pariah in your family. So, living in the ancient Near East parents' basement. Did they have basements in the ancient Near East? No, they didn't. They had haylofts.
You were outside in the manger.
You were outside in the manger. That was as close as it got to a basement. Ryan Cohnkamp, would you ever think about eloping back then? It was done, but with incredible shame attached. Okay?
It would be permanent.
Yeah. Yeah. There is this cuneiform tablet of a young man who fell in love with a young lady, and he wanted her, she wanted him. The parents had promised her, had betrothed her to somebody else. So the young man got a bunch of his friends together and started singing in the streets his love for his woman. And he got up to his beloved's home, and the father met them and killed them all. That was the end of true early love.
Not happy.
Father was having none of that. Killed the boyfriend and all his friends. Happened because he didn't have a shotgun. Yeah, well, if he had a shotgun, it would have ended the same. Because wow. Yeah, that's young love for you in the ancient Near East. CPM versus DOS. Finally, a Disney tale for the dads. Yep, and it's recorded in a cuneiform tablet, and it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Oh boy. Good times, good times. Yeah, so the long and the short of it is that back in the ancient Near East, your first marriage was almost always arranged by mom or dad. Usually both. So there you go. Not romantic, but there it is.
And as you said, often from birth.
Yeah, well, sometimes from birth. Not always from birth, though. But all right, let's move on to the next super chat here. Next one here is from TBTM for $4.99. Thank you very much for the super chat. He says, I am confused about Ezekiel 29, 17 to 21. The prophecy seems like it was not fulfilled. Could Persia possibly have taken Babylon's role in this? Let's look at this. Okay, Ezekiel. Ezekiel 29, 17 to 21. Let's see. Okay. Verse 17. Now, in the 27th year, in the first month of the first on the first of the month, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, made his army labor hard against Tyre. Every head was made bald, every shoulder was rubbed bare, and he and his army had no wages from Tyre for the labor he had performed against it. Therefore, Thus says the Lord God, behold, I shall give the land of Egypt to Israel, to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he will carry off her wealth and capture her spoil and her plunder, and it will be wages for his army, and it will be given to him the land of Egypt for his labor which he had performed, because they had acted for me, declared Lord. On that day I shall make a horn spout for the house of Israel, and I shall open your mouth in their midst, and then they will know that I am the Lord. Okay. Now, the whole idea, there's two issues in this text. One is the Nebuchadnezzar conquest of Tyre. Second is the conquest of Egypt. Okay. Now, I would say this. You get people who basically said Nebuchadnezzar conquered neither. Now, we know that Nebuchadnezzar took Tyre because there's two tablets from Nebuchadnezzar II. He's Nebuchadnezzar II. That one that says that there was a soldier who was provisioning himself for the conquest of Tyre, and the second tablet that dates to the Nebuchadnezzar II that talks about Tyre as a province of Babylon. Okay. So it's clear that there was a conquest of Tyre, and it was successful, but maybe it didn't have the spoils that Nebuchadnezzar was hoping for, but it was successful. So from the cuneiform tablets, we can definitely gather that. Now, both of those tablets are in the British Museum. Okay, so that's how the conquest of Tyre did go off, and it was successful, although probably it took much labor to get there. Now, as far as Egypt goes, we do have one of the things we noticed about Egypt at the time of, say, the Babylonian conquest is there does seem to have been some looting. Okay. The temples, one of the things you can do with say temple furniture is you can monitor how stable things were by the grandiosity and the beauty of the specific items that were used in temple rituals, like barks. And during, say, the New Kingdom, you start getting a rise in the grandeur of this consistent rise in the grandeur of sacred barks from the early 18th dynasty all the way to the end of the 20th dynasty. Okay, so you get that. And it continues on after that to a large extent. Okay? But you get to the Dynasty 25, and there's been some looting already. So that's to be expected. But then you get a little dip up. So after the Napatan dynasty loots Egypt, you get sort of this, okay, they're starting to rebuild things in Dynasty 26. And right up to the end of Dynasty 26, you get that sort of rise again of ritual furniture, and then it plunges again. It just like starts from nothing. Okay, so now you got this, particularly during the reign of, say, Apres. Apres is when you start seeing it just plummet again. So then the question is, who's looting Egypt? Who's looting Egypt around the time of Apres? You don't have a lot of options here. I mean, it's not like Libya's doing it. I mean, yeah, Libya's in decline at this point. You know, the 26th dynasty, they're the Libyan rulers. They're withdrawing. They're withdrawing from Egypt, and you know, they're still reigning at Tanis, but they're withdrawing from the rest of Egypt because they can't hold it. Well, then the question is, who is it that they can't hold it from? It's not the Israelites, certainly, because the Israelites are having their problems with Babylon. It's not the Assyrians. The Assyrians are defeated. And the Assyrians did, you know, conquer Egypt twice. Okay, so the pump was primed here for Babylon to at least do another raid where they stole stuff. So here's the thing: I don't think Nebuchadnezzar came into Egypt and ruled, or even replaced the king, because the king was too far north. He's in the swamps. Nobody cares to go after him. But I think what happened was that Nebuchadnezzar raided Egypt, stole the stuff, and went home. Essentially, verse 19. He will carry off her wealth and capture her spoil and seize her plunder, and it will be wages for his army. And that's exactly what I think happened. They took all that sacred furniture, they hauled it back to Babylon, they put it in the furnaces, they burned it all down to metal, and then they paid their soldiers. Because that's what Babylonians did. They stole ritual furniture, they melted it down, and they used the metal to pay their armies. What better place to get that stuff than Egypt? That's that only makes sense. So that's what I think happened. We don't have a lot of inscriptions from that time period, and that's another thing too, is we don't have a lot of inscriptions from that period of time, so it's hard to confirm one way or the other. But from at least the what small data we have from that time period, that's what seems to happen, is Egypt got looted by someone during the time of Apries. Who can do this? Well, there ain't many options. So anyway, I hope that helps. Thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Andrew Graham, come on, take the money and run. Yeah. Darkblade basically went to Egypt as a cash grab because Tyre didn't provide enough loot. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Egypt was a paper tiger. It couldn't defend its borders, and it was just right for the looting. They didn't hang around. They didn't want to hang around. They didn't need to hang around. They just stole stuff and went home. Okay, next one here. Super chat here is from TBTM for $4.99. Thank you for the super chat. What do you think happened to Sennacherib's army? Isaiah 37:36. Is it plague, as in 2 Samuel 24:15-16? Angel of the Lord struck Israel with a plague. All right, let's take a look at the text, and then I'll give you what I think. Isaiah 37. 36. Then the angel of the Lord went out and struck 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. When men rose early in the morning, behold, all these were dead. Okay. You know what I think killed the Assyrians? Cholera. Cholera killed the Assyrians. Here's the thing with cholera. You get this in particularly in campsites and places of confined areas where you don't have good sanitation, where the water supply is sketchy, and people are in tight groups. And it will kill you deader than dead. Fast. So that's what I think happened here, is they had contaminated water that they contaminated because they weren't practicing good sanitation, being soldiers. There was a lot of them stuck in one place, camped around Jerusalem. And I think cholera got the best of them. And cholera can kill a lot of people really, really quickly. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Cholera is just one of those crazy things that, that can leave half the city dead. And there have been many, many cholera outbreaks in history that have killed a lot of people. Thomas says, cholera, tale as old as time. Yeah. Sadly, yes. Yes, sadly, cholera. Well, there was one instance of cholera in Chicago that was really um pretty in that case, in the case of the Chicago cholera outbreak, um they had piped the sewage into the water supply. Okay? They had actually connected the sewage and the water lines. So anyone who drank from the fresh water got cholera. And it killed thousands of people. It killed thousands of people. They discovered it because um um they noticed that those people who were drinking at the breweries were getting cholera. Because so you went to the pubs and you didn't catch cholera. So people who went to the pubs, drank beer all day, they were fine. Because beer is boiled. So so, you know, that's just one of those things where getting drunk wins again. Yeah, it does. Alcoholics stay winning until their liver gives out. Yeah, but I mean, compared to cholera, alcoholism won't kill you quite as fast.
There is the cultural content
Yeah.
that beer.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, beer had always had a nutritional supplementary value in all cultures. So yeah, beer, the number one strategy for cleaning water since 3000 BC. It was. Yeah. AT Ministries. Jetty's wisdom is timeless. Oh yeah. Yeah, Jetty drank like 6 gallons of beer a day. That's all he drank was beer. Now, granted, the beer of Egypt was like 1 to 3%. It wasn't strong, but yeah. So yeah. I mean, in a case, I mean that's what they discovered in Egypt was those who drank from the river were the sickest. Then the wells, then the healthiest drank beer. So, and it was true in Chicago uh, during the cholera outbreak that those who drank beer lived, while those who drank from the water taps got cholera and died. So that's what I think happened to Sennacherib's army. I think there was a sanitation issue. They caught cholera, and hundreds of thousands of them, tens of thousands of them died as a result. So, so anyway, I hope that helps. That's what I think happened. No proof, of course, but it's a pretty good estimate seeing how many died, how fast. And cholera can kill very, very quickly, especially if there's already dehydration involved, which, given a conquest, isn't given an army's encampment, isn't actually unexpected either. Yeah. So, hope that helps. Thank you for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Next one here is from 501 Mobius for $10. Thank you for the super chat. In 1 Chronicles 7:21, what are the sons of Ephraim doing stealing livestock in Gath? They should be in Egypt living the life of luxury as scion grandsons of the vizier. Okay. There's some issues here. Let's get to this. Because it isn't quite like that. First Chronicles, sorry. First Chronicles. Chronicles 7:21. All right. We'll start at verse 20 here. And the sons of Ephraim were Shethullah, and Bered his son, Tahath his son, Eladah his son, Tahath his son, Zabad his son, Shethullah his son, and Ezer and Eliad, whom the men of Gath who were born in the land killed, because they came down to take their livestock. Okay, and their father Ephraim mourned many days, and his relatives came to comfort him. Okay, now there's a lot of confusion with this passage. Okay, first of all, this is once they actually enter the Holy Land. So the span of time between Ephraim and these people is about 300 years. Okay, so this is not the original Ephraim. This is the what we call the progenitor, or not the progenitor, the clan chief, the tribal chief. Okay, so he's the tribal chief that's doing the mourning here. Okay, and he's doing mourning on behalf of Ephraim, the original Ephraim. And these so-called sons, these are the clans. Okay, so that's what's going on as far as the setting here. Okay, so if this had been the actual grandson of Ephraim, yes, they would still be in Egypt, because Ephraim did not send his children back to Canaan. Okay, because there was no conquest yet. They had not taken the land. So it doesn't even make sense to say that these are the grandsons of Ephraim. Okay? So, or grandsons of Joseph, as it were. So this doesn't even make sense to make that sort of claim here. So this is after the conquest, and these are the clans of the conquest. Okay? Now, the text is a little ambiguous here, but you can still figure it out. It's not the sons of Ephraim doing the stealing here. And you'd only sort of catch this if you caught the geographical cues here. And it says here in verse 21, whom the men of Gath who were born in the land, because they came down, and that's the key verse, the key passage, came down, they descended to take their livestock. Now, when we talk about the Shephelah, and all this is taking place in the Shephelah, okay, you've got two high points in the land and a low point. The agricultural land is in the low point. The cities are in the high point. Okay? You have Gath on the western side of the Shephelah. The city of Gath is in the highlands of the Shephelah. So, to kill them, the ones that have to descend are the Gathites here, not the Ephraimites. So that's so it's not the sons of Ephraim that are doing the stealing here. It's the Gathites doing the stealing. It's just a kind of ambiguously written verse. Okay, but that's really who's doing the stealing here. It's the Gathites doing the stealing, not the Ephraimites, because you don't pasture your cattle in the highlands. That's not where you pasture your cattle. You pasture your cattle in the lowlands. So the cattle's in the lowlands. Okay? So they're coming down. The Gathites are coming down. They're stealing the cattle in the lowlands, and they're having to go back up. So that's who's doing the stealing here, at least as we can best sort of figure out from the passage. As I said, it is a little ambiguous. You might be able to make a case both ways, but I don't think it's the sons of Ephraim that are doing the stealing here, because they're living in the land. They're not living in the cities. Remember, the cities belong to the Levites. So the Ephraimites, they're living in the agricultural villages in the agricultural land itself. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for the super chat. So that's really what's going on here. These are not the grandsons of Joseph. These are the clans of the tribe of Ephraim that have come into the land after the conquest. They're making their home in the land in the Shephelah, and then they're encountering the Gathites who come down, kill everybody, steal the cattle, and go back. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciated.
Oh,
Yeah?
Andrew asked, was there a charge for being indiscriminate?
Andrew Grimm asks, was there a charge for being drunk and disorderly in the ancient Near East? Depends. If you got too rowdy, yes, you could get a beating. You could get a beating if you were too rowdy, but generally most people weren't publicly drunk and disorderly. And even then, most of the time it wasn't a crime. It was only a crime if you started doing other crimes. Okay? So, let's say you were drunk and disorderly and sets to fire to someone else's barn. Yeah, you can expect a beating. So, She-Ra, the honor of Ephraim. Yes. Yes, She-Ra was quite the character. Okay. So, right, I only had 6 gallons, officer. Well, there was no such thing as driving an ox cart under the influence. Okay. So there wasn't a crime back then. But if you started using a weapon while drunk and disorderly, oh yeah, definitely you would have gotten punishment for that. But then again, at that point, your crime is not drunkenness; it's using a weapon in a dangerous manner. So, or assault, or potentially murder. So, yeah. So you only got punished for being publicly drunk if you did something, did another crime while being drunk. Okay, so hope that answered that question. Thank you very much for that super chat. Very much appreciated. Hope that helps. Next one here is from TBTM for 199. Thank you for the super chat. What are the biggest problems with the Levite hypothesis? Okay. I think we need to sort of explain the Levite hypothesis before we get into it. The Levite hypothesis is that there was a real exodus, but it was only of the tribe of Levi. So only the Levites left Egypt. It was a real small exodus of about 2,000 people. They enter into the promised land somehow, really without fighting. And they convinced all the other tribes of Israelites, or Canaanites, they convinced all these Canaanites to band together to become Israelites and give up pork, follow all these dietary laws, do whatever they say. But that's sort of the core of the Levite hypothesis. Now, the Levite hypothesis depends really, really strongly on the documentary hypothesis. Okay? For example, if you listen to Richard Elliott Friedman's lectures on the Levite hypothesis, 80% of the hypothesis, 80% of his lectures are always on the documentary hypothesis. The last 20% is on the Levite Exodus itself. Okay? So what it requires is it's a textual view. It basically is looking at the literary sources and saying, okay, E, P, and D, which are primarily Levite sources, They have an emphasis on circumcision. Therefore, those coming out of the Exodus must have been primarily Levites. Most of the names of the people who left the Exodus and had Egyptian names, they were Levites. Of course, they ignore her, which is the Egyptian name Horus, which applied to a Judite, but hey. But yeah, you'll hear them saying that all the Egyptian names of those coming out of the Exodus, those Israelites who had Egyptian names, they were Levites, which is not true. It's just not true. And then they somehow sneak into Canaan and convince a whole vast number of tribes to rise up against other Canaanites, apparently, and Amorites, and knock everyone off in exchange for you do everything we tell you to do. Okay. I don't really think I have to lay out the problems with the hypothesis here in any great detail. It's almost self-refuting. The whole idea of the quiet infiltration, I think, is nonsense. I think it's archaeologically nonsense. The fact is, we do have destructions for Hatzor and Jericho. There's no reason to destroy Jericho if you're already inside the country. There's only one reason to destroy Jericho. Because it's guarding the fords of the Jordan. You only have to destroy Jericho if you want to get into Canaan. If you're already inside Canaan because you snuck in somehow, there's no need to destroy Jericho. I think the idea of a 2,000 person Exodus is just ridiculous. The whole idea that, there were at least 5,000 people at Avaris all by itself. 5 to 50,000. So I think you're talking about an Exodus at least in the tens of thousands, not the 2,000. I think the documentary hypothesis is an idiotic theory that is based upon hypothetical sources for which there's no warrant, no methodological justification. I just think it's one of those crazy theories like phrenology that deserves to die. So without the documentary hypothesis, really the whole Levite hypothesis thing goes to dust. It needs the documentary hypothesis. Without the documentary hypothesis, the Levite hypothesis has no warrant. So, but this is again why Friedman devotes most of his time to the documentary hypothesis. Because without that, the Levite hypothesis is just, there's nothing to it. So, just it's so stupid. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, this is why we're evidentialists. So, Mama says, plus if it was only 2,000 people, would Pharaoh even bother? That's the big question, isn't it? Would he bother with 2,000 people? That's... No, 2,000 leaving at Avaris is nothing. It's tourist season's over, yeah. Darkblade. So the documentary hypothesis is like the Levite hypothesis is half worn out IV machine. Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So, that's pretty hard to argue. Andrew, they left to sneak into Canaan, then God took over. Yeah, well, the whole idea of sneaking into Canaan, is just, what? I mean, 2,000 people is not going to take out Jericho, okay? You're not going to be able to take out Jericho with 2,000 people, okay? I mean, most of them could probably do I mean, that's like a junior high school coming at you. You know, a fortified city against a bunch of high school students. You know, come on, really. Yeah, Mama says you're certainly not going to conquer all Canaan with 2,000 people. You're not gonna wipe out everyone in Jericho with 2,000 people. It's just, I mean, Jericho's not a big city, okay, but it is well fortified.
Well, with 2,000, all you need is
Yeah, yeah. With 2,000 people, I mean, they could have. If that was the case, they could have just moved into Jericho. You know, if that's what they, if you only had 2,000 people, you know, and you could take over Jericho, just stay there. You got everything you need in Jericho for that. It's just not a. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Just kind of crazy that we're. Oh dear. Okay, so yeah, I think we've kind of beat that horse to death. Uh, Suffice it to say, I don't buy the Levite hypothesis. So, Andrew Crabe, 2,000 well-trained priests. Well, that's sort of the thing with the high Levite hypothesis too. Is they were said to be priests in Egypt. So 2,000 trained priests from Egypt are conquering Jericho. No, no. All right. Mama says this one is so embarrassingly stupid that I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Young teaches it. Ooh, low blow, low blow. All right, let's move on to the next one. The peeps are getting rowdy here. Luis Sandoval for 100 Dominican pesos. Are cursed objects, dolls, books, etc. a real thing? Ah, that one is really difficult to answer. Okay. Um, and I think it's really difficult to answer because we have insufficient data. Okay. Um, the whole idea, okay, of cursed objects is what do we mean by cursed? Objects that bring you misfortune, possessed toys. I mean, what are we really talking about here when we even talk about cursed objects? Okay. Um, Now I have a picture of a real voodoo doll, a voodoo doll that was really, really used for its intended purpose, religious purpose, that was left in a certain furniture store. Do I think that object was cursed? No. But
used.
was it used for that purpose? Yes. Now, there was some serious hate attached to that voodoo doll. I mean, there was pins in it and chains and all that stuff, so it was ooh. Okay. But um do I think, first of all, do I think that an object can be possessed? No. Okay? Do I think an object can have the taint of evil attached to it? Yes. There's a difference, though, between saying something is possessed and having something that has the taint of evil. With the taint of evil, it becomes more receptive of things that are evil. Okay? So, like for example, if a psychic uses a crystal ball, that crystal ball becomes tainted in such a way that it becomes more receptive for its use as an object of evil.
Is that related to
Yes, it's basically profanity amplified.
the inverse?
Yeah, it's the inverse of sacred space. So instead of it being something sacred and holy, it becomes something profane and abominated. Okay? So I think something having the taint of evil is possible. So then, for example, this whole idea then that, sort of the idea that an object can be receptive to being used in an evil way, yeah, sure, that's possible. Is it possessed? I don't think so. Okay, so I don't think say things like possessed toys are a thing. Okay, although Raggedy Ann sure looks possessed to me. Darkblade, if a fortune teller uses some stylized cards, do those gain the taint of evil? They could, but that doesn't mean they will. Okay? Louis Sandoval, like when someone perhaps has a baseball bat and uses it for evil purposes. Yeah. Yeah, like that. Now, is that psychosomatic? Possibly. That is possibly psychosomatic, that someone may know that an item is used for evil, and is thus inclined to use it for evil too. There is that possibility that there's a psychosomatic element. There is some possibility that folk basically applied pharmacology could be involved too. Or like, for example, if somebody has a baseball bat, like a drug dealer, he always has cocaine on his hands. Okay? And he grabs the handle of the bat and sort of grinds the cocaine into the leather handle of the bat, so that the next person picks it up and, becomes a little less inhibited to do evil with it. So there's a various factors of psychology, pharmacology that are involved with these things, as well as possibly, say, the spiritual as well.
Any to medieval.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of ancient Near Eastern magic involved a lot of pharmacology, so we can't rule that out as well. Tim Yara, how about holy objects then? Well, the fact is that holy objects tend to be used for holy purposes consistently. You don't often see a priest taking the Eucharist, the vessel of the Eucharist, and slamming it into somebody's head. I'm just saying. Or taking someone's head and dunking it into the baptismal font. Okay. I have yet to see a priest do that. The equivalent of sticking someone's head in the toilet, but with a baptismal font. James Bond would. I'm sure he would. Cocaine bat. Sure.
But it is true that you go into churches and cathedrals, there's a feeling of.
Yeah, there is. There is a feeling of peace you have when you enter a cathedral or a church, and there is holiness to it, peace, sanctity, and a general respect for these things. So the whole idea of Mama says here, I have witnessed a cursed object placed outside of a church. I felt it there in my spirit, therefore, before seeing it with my eyes. Now, was it spirits hanging around or the curse? Probably spirits hanging around. The idea of a curse itself, now, one of the things we have to keep in mind is, curses are a magical incantation, religiously speaking. Okay? They're not a residual effect. So, what you're doing when you curse someone is you are doing a magical incantation to bring misfortune upon somebody. Okay? That is not something that can stay resident in an object. But there's nothing preventing somebody from making a spell like that where it invites, say, good-for-nothing demons to hang around. So Windows ME, yes, okay. Windows ME was definitely cursed. Cursed software.
No, just human stupidity.
Human stupidity.
On the part of the developer.
Is human stupidity and malfeasance distinguishable? Well, that's that comment. Malfeasance and incompetence is barely distinguishable.
Yeah.
Ryan Copenkamp, how did you die? Baptismal font. Yeah, pretty much. Mama says, it was a bird skull with some other object inside a small protective birdhouse. It was facing the back of the church. I informed the church and they removed it. Yeah, and they either would have buried it or burned it. So.
Programmers do not. No, the ones that work for Microsoft are just plain.
Well, okay, this is something where, Ryan Cohenkamp says programmers do not count as evil spirits. Now, Mrs. Producer says no, they don't. I think they're part of the undead. I think if you worked for Microsoft, you are part of the living dead. You have lost your soul to Bill Gates.
I do think they do. No, your boss is doing.
Tim Yara asks, you encounter a new tomb that has an ancient curse written on the opening against any trespasser. Do you open the tomb? Yes. That's where absolutely, that's where the good stuff is.
That means a treasure. You put a face mask against the mold that's usually in. The mummy's curse can't get.
Well, the mummy's curse was fake anyway. You know how that happened? How the curse of the mummy was?
I know it's recorded
okay.
To be certain molds.
It's not. Okay, here's the curse of the mummy from King Tut's tomb. Back in when Howard Carter was excavating the tomb of King Tut, he had an exclusive contract to give Burton's photos, to the Times, the UK Times. But one of the competing newspapers wanted access to those photos, but wouldn't pay Carter to get them. So the competing newspaper made up this story of people dying from the curse of the mummy. It was all professional jealousy. Yeah, they made up the whole thing, such as the mold killing people, people dying from mosquito bites that got infected. Well, Howard Carter, Lord Carnarvon did die from that. Howard Carter didn't, though. I mean, he went on and lived another 20, 30 years. Yeah, well.
Pretty nasty.
Yeah. CPM versus DOS. What? No way! Journalists would make things up. Big Destiny. Did Egyptian tomb raiders not believe in the curses or could not read them? Okay, let's talk about curses on Egyptian tombs. They aren't what you think they are. We only have a couple of examples of curses from Egyptian tombs. And it's not against entry. Most of those curses are, if you come into this tomb without being ritually pure, you'll be cursed. It didn't prevent entry. In fact, most of the tombs in Egypt had a public place where people could come in, leave offerings, libation and food offerings for the dead, say prayers for the dead, etc. So most of the people who entered the tombs were allowed to do so as long as they were ritually pure and they did so with no evil intent. But it was the ones who sort of came in to wreck the place, defile the tomb. Those were the ones that they did curses against. So, Louis Sandoval. So it was a conditional thing. Yeah, it's a conditional thing. So, okay. So there we have it. I don't think there's cursed objects, at least not as per se, but there can be objects that have the taint of evil attached to them. What?
Yeah, please, no stealing. Management.
CPM versus DOS. Please, no stealing. Management. All right, next super chat here from Luis Sandoval for 100 Dominican pesos. How is possession different from mental illness? Okay. As far as its symptoms, there's sometimes very little difference, which is why when one is faced with a case of, say, demonic possession, you have to be very, very careful about this. It's always best to have the patient be assessed for mental illness first. Okay? Now, there is a the best difference that we can sort of when assessing, say, a case of demonic possession, what sort of separates those who are possessed from those who just have a mental illness seems to be the manifestation of preternatural abilities. Okay? Now, what are preternatural abilities? These are abilities that are sort of beyond the normal abilities that most people have. So it's things like knowing ancient languages that you've never had instruction in. Romani ite Domum. So, people speaking Assyrian that they've never been taught Assyrian, or super strength is another example of a preternatural ability, or levitation. Okay. I know of no mental illness that has as one of its symptoms levitation. Okay. So if somebody is levitating over the room, you probably have a case of demon possession, not mental illness. Just saying. So, your cat says hi, huh?
He says hi back.
Big Destiny. Let's say that.
Yeah.
923.
Certain drugs do give people super strength.
Big Destiny. Yeah, possession is really a diagnosis of exclusion. Yes, as I says, until the preternatural stuff starts showing up. Once the preternatural abilities start showing up, it becomes less about exclusion at that point. Yeah, super strength is one of those things that's kind of iffy. CPM, yeah, none of the crackheads can do that around me. Now, crackhead strength does exist. Yeah, that does. But again, if they're levitating, as I say, I don't know any drug or any mental illness that can give you the ability to levitate. Just saying. I don't know any drug that will or mental illness that will give you the ability to speak ancient Hittite. Just saying. Okay. So
Louis Sandoval asks what criteria just
well,
manifestation of supernatural ability.
yeah, Lewis says, what criteria do scholars use to differentiate alleged demonic possession from mental or neurological disorder? Well, it's not. We're not talking here about a scholarly thing here. This is more of a pastoral thing than anything else. There's, as I said, the manifestation of preternatural abilities is, again, probably the the hallmark of demonic possession. So
Andrew Graham, levitating. Oh, that's
Andrew Graham levitating. No, we're just practicing for the rapture. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah. Um. I mean, here's the thing. In every other respect, demonic possession looks like mental illness. This is why it's so difficult to sort of differentiate the two. But say once you've got that sort of once you've observed some preternatural abilities, that's when sort of all the diagnosis has to take that next step. Now you have to then, with the preternatural abilities, ask: is there anything else that could cause these? As I said, like for example, like the super strength, are they on some sort of medication that could cause that? Is their language acquisition skills? Is there something in their history where they had access to some of this? Is it just gibberish? You know, so at that point you'd have to look at that. The levitation, that's really hard to that's real hard to discount. Some
what's
of
that?
the telekinesis.
The ancient knowledge. You know,
Telekinesis, that's another one that could manifest. Yeah, if you've got objects flying all over the room that shouldn't be flying, and you don't have mice or rats in the house, well, okay. Yeah. Just some space crack. Yeah. that would take quite some space crack. Okay, so that's really how you would sort of differentiate is the manifestation of preternatural abilities. So until you see that there's something there that's beyond just say normal things that would maybe happening, uh, then you would then look at say less likely alternatives here. Louis Sandoval, are there modern cases of levitation and telekinesis? Yes, there are. There have been several cases of them, and you have there has been um, many well documented cases of both. So, okay, so let's move on here. Next one. Louis Sandoval for 100 Dominican pesos. Thank you very much for the super chat. Do modern governments contact spiritual beings? Not routinely. Let's just say this: modern governments are influenced. We have to Let's make a differentiation. There's a difference between demonic influence and demonic possession. Modern governments do undergo demonic influence. They don't undergo necessarily demonic possession. Like, for example, it's said that Herod was influenced by a demon, but not possessed. The idea here is that demons can sway the thinking of people in power. And sometimes this is just as pedestrian as bribery. Not that we've ever had bribery in our governments, but you do get influence through, say, basically moral compromise. That's one way of doing this. So so there they're then at that point, it's just they're doing the spirit's bidding, but it's not that they're doing it by being possessed by demons, because demons, once they possess a body, they take it for a joyride. They it's like they've got the keys to a Corvette and they're like a 13-year-old. Okay, they're going to trash that car, take it on the highway and crash it into the nearest bridge as soon as they get to 120 miles per hour. So spirits that really want to influence people in power, they tend to use methods of influence more than possession. So, um, Algot Robinson says, feels more like government are demonic than holy, as Paul speaking of it. Well, here's the issue. All power has been instituted by God. All authority is appointed by God. But that authority doesn't necessarily obey God. That authority can be subject to demonic influence. So it's both. Okay, it's both. Ryan Cohen, yeah, but hate to see a demon with a driver's license. Yeah. You're not kidding. Okay. Gandalf based. Congressmen aren't cutting themselves in secret altars inside their homes. It's not that interesting as fantasy novels. Modern politics is much more driven by greed and power. Money. Yeah. Yeah, money drives a lot of modern politics, but that's the way to moral corruption. So, you know, so governments are not in contact with spiritual beings, except that they can be influenced by them. Finally, from Luis Sandoval for 100 Dominican pesos, does God possess and experience emotions? Yes, they do. Or he does. God does have emotions. It's just not emotions like we as human beings have. Okay? Let's explain how God experiences emotions. We tend to experience emotions because we are beings that change. We change. Our state of mind changes, and that results in us changing our emotions. We'll go from happy to sad to angry based upon a state of being that we are currently in. That's not how that's not how God experiences emotions. God experiences emotions in terms of proximity. Okay? So God surrounds himself with holiness, so he does not have to experience wrath and anger. God, in the presence of sin, experiences anger. Okay? God, in the presence of his people, experiences love, compassion, and grace. But again, it's again a matter of proximity. When God is in proximity of sin and evil, he experiences anger. So what does he do? He moves away from that so he doesn't have to experience the anger. Okay? So it's a matter of proximity to which. So his reaction to sin is always the same. In the proximity of sin, he experiences anger and wrath. In the in the presence of those he loves, he experiences love and grace and mercy. So it's a matter of where he is in proximity to his created order. Okay? So this is why there's also this hard separation between sacred and profane space. That's what sort of defines God's boundaries then. And his emotional state will depend upon where he is within that framework of sacred and profane. So I hope that helps explain God's emotions. Thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Okay. Ryzen Draco says, similar to magnets and charged particles. If you try bringing two similarly charged particles together, they will repel. The nature doesn't change, but its environment has effects. Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. Okay, Messianic Talmud for $5. Thank you for the super chat. How accurate were Nubian bowmen in battles with the Egyptians? Deadly accurate. Nubian bowmen were incredibly good archers. In fact, they are known for their archery. The word for Nubia was Tasseti, the land of the bowmen. Okay? If you see it written in hieroglyphics, it's essentially the hieroglyph for land and three bows. So it's Tasseti, the land that's Nubia. That's the land of the bowmen. So Nubians were incredibly good archers, incredibly deadly at it. So were they accurate? Yes. Were they lethal with it? Yes. You did not want to end up on the wrong end of a Nubian bow. Okay? So, hope that helped. Thank you for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Next one here is from Messianic Talmud for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Yes, did the loss of Egyptian chariots during the Exodus contribute to the eventual power collapse of the pharaohs in the 19th and 20th dynasties? Yes, I think so. Here's the thing. It takes a long time to reap. Contrary to what Daniel Hayes says, it takes a long time to rebuild chariot armies. Okay? You have to figure that at the Yom Suf incident, that Egypt lost probably 3/4 of its chariots. That's not something you can rebuild overnight. Chariot armies take decades to build up. And it's not just the fact that you have to get the horses. Okay, so you have to breed horses. Okay, so there's that. You have to import the wood. Okay, Egypt did not have native wood for chariots. They didn't have vast amounts of forests that they could go cut down to make chariots. You had to, in New Kingdom Egypt, you had to import the wood. Okay? Now, there was probably a large surplus of wood because of the destruction of the trees, because of the Exodus, but you still needed people to buy those chariots. Okay? Because chariot armies were they're volunteer. And the way the Egyptian army worked was you had to volunteer and you had to have the money to buy the chariot. So the guy bought the chariot and then was given the horses or loaned the horses to ride the chariot. Okay? Ryan goes, why didn't they just get chariots wheels from the bottom of the Red Sea? Because they didn't have scuba gear back then. Okay? So, this takes decades to rebuild. And the problem, too, is that you need existing charioteers to train future charioteers. Okay, just like if you join the army today, if you join the army today and you go to boot camp, there's a drill sergeant there who used to be in boot camp, who's going to do, he's going to yell at you a lot, he's going to get you in physical shape, he's going to get you ready for war. But he only exists because there was somebody else to train him to do this. Charioteers are the same way. Charioteers undergo a lot of training. Okay? So, Daniel Hayes' idiotic idea that you can just rebuild a chariot army in 2 years just to the snap of Pharaoh's finger is dumb. It's so stupid. No army works like that. It takes time to raise up horses, it takes time to breed horses, it takes time to build new chariots, it takes lots of time to train a charioteer. Incredibly long time to train a charioteer. And then you have to train more charioteers. And then you have to find wealthy families willing to give up their son to the army. You know, after you lose a lot of sons to drowning in a chariot, those families may not be so willing to give up more sons for that. And again, it is volunteer. So by the time you get to the end of Ramses II's reign, and the chariot army that Merneptah inherits, it's not so good anymore. I mean, the chariot army of Ramses II was good, but by the end of his reign, it wasn't. In fact, when the Libyans invaded Egypt after Merneptah came to the throne, it took 3 months. It took 3 whole months for Merneptah to drive out the Libyans, because he didn't have the army. He didn't have the chariots. He couldn't get them out of the Libyans had actually come into Egypt as far as Heliopolis. Okay, well, now they're doing siege to Heliopolis. Heliopolis is in the center of the country. If Egypt couldn't throw out the Libyans, who are in the center of the country, there's an issue there. So you would have to say that the loss of the Egyptian chariots under Ramses II was a pivotal reason why, say, Merneptah wasn't able to drive out the Libyans quickly or easily. And even when Merneptah does his campaign into Canaan, it's really only in a very limited capacity. He goes essentially up the coastal plain, back down the Shephelah to clobber Gezer, and he goes home. So oh, Mama, interesting thought. I wonder how close Heliopolis was to the equator. It's not that close. I don't know exactly how far it is from the equator, but it's not that close. So you still have to go down a fair latitude to hit the equator. It's still north of the equator by quite a distance. Okay, next one here. Big Destiny says, it takes even longer to train horses when you're on the cutting edge of horse husbandry. I suppose, yeah. Yeah, Ryan Cohen Camp says 46 degrees north. Or 30 degrees north, sorry. 30 degrees, 7 minutes, 46 seconds north. Okay, so yeah, definitely it contributed to the decline of the 20th, 19th, and 20th dynasties. So, okay, next one here is from Messianic Talmud for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Did the Israelites choose the bovine to worship at Mount Sinai because they were so prominent as Egyptian deities? I have my own view on this, which is the bovine worship that they did at Mount Sinai was a particular manifestation of a very, very particular Egyptian deity, which was called the Son of Hassat. The Son of Hassat, it's a really neat myth, which I'm shocked that no exegete has ever heard of it. But it's just the ideal fit for the golden calf thing. Okay? Now, Hassat is one of the cow deities, okay? But it was believed that when the king died, he was reborn as the male calf, the golden male calf of the cow deity Hassat. So I think this is, because remember at the Mount Sinai, people ask, is Moses dead? Is Yahweh dead? And Aaron says, here's your golden calf. Here is Yahweh, reborn as a golden calf. Wow, this just screams Son of Hassat all over it. Because that's exactly the myth of the Son of Hassat. Deity is dead. He is reborn as a golden calf. There he is. So, absolutely that this is, I think the ideal fit is the Son of Hassat myth. And they would have all known this one, because bovine worship was ubiquitous in Egypt. So, Ryan asks, did Jeroboam get inspiration for his idols from the Mount Sinai golden calf? No, he didn't. The temple dedication at Tel Dan was not a calf. Those weren't calves, those were bulls. And bulls were more associated with Baal worship. Baal was said to have ridden on the back of a bull. Okay? So Jeroboam gets the idea from Baal worship, not from the golden calf. They're not related. Golden calf and the bulls at Tel Dan aren't related. But it's very interesting, though, that the golden calf is male. The golden calf is male. It's not female. So it's not a heifer. It's a male calf. So that very much limits who the candidates are in, say, Egyptian bovine deities. There isn't that many. It's interesting. When you look at, say, Egyptian bovine deities, there are more female cows in Egyptian bovine deities than there are bulls. Now, there are some bulls. Apusiris is a bull. The Nevis bull is a bull. The what's it called now? The Sky Bull is a bull. But Son of Hassat happens to be a male calf. So there you go. Again, of the base asks, since it's on topic, that's cool. Would the surrounding Canaanite cultures be influenced by Egypt, given the prior power over the region? Just asking due to later issues with the Israelites we'll deal with. Egypt did have some influence. More of it was artistic and iconographic than religious. There wasn't too much of... There were some deities that did penetrate Canaanite culture. Most notably is the worship of Bes. Okay? Bes did penetrate Canaanite culture. He was worshipped at the Tophets, which were sites of child sacrifice. While Bes was not a god that you sacrifice children to in Egypt, around the rest of the Mediterranean he was. So, but most of, say, the influence Egypt had on, say, Canaanite culture was much more artistic, trade goods, that sort of thing. Less religious. Now, interestingly enough, the influence between Canaanite and Egyptian cultures, as far as religion goes, tend to go both ways. Egypt did adopt some Canaanite deities, like it did adopt Baal, it did adopt Balat, it did adopt Resheph, it adopted Astarte. So it did adopt some Canaanite deities. But the influence seemed to be more of Canaanite into Egypt than Egypt into Canaanite, as far as sort of the extension of, say, religious worship. We do have some evidence of solar worship in Canaan that was instigated by Egypt, but that seems to be more or less the limits of their influence, which is Bes worship and solar worship. So, hope that helped. Thank you for the question. Okay, next one here is from Messianic Talmud for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Did the Israelites choose the bovine to worship at Mount Sinai because they were so prominent as Egyptian deities? Well, they were ubiquitous in Egypt. There were many Egyptian bovine deities, at least 24, probably a lot more. I haven't done a formal count of all of them, but I've counted at least 24. But you have to understand that Egypt had something like 3,000 deities. So it's impossible to say that you've counted them all. There's even, some of Egypt's deities are only known by name alone. We have no idea if they were bovine or not, or anything else. So we've got some issues with, say, cataloging all the various deities of Egypt. Here's the thing: when we have, there was in the 1970s, it was thought that Egypt had 450 deities. That was sort of the thought to be the limit of Egyptian religion. And then this German guy did a catalog of all the divine names that show up everywhere. And he came up with like 3,000. So, again, many of these are just known by name. Some of these we have no description for at all. So I'm sure that some of those would have had to have been bovine deities. So when we say that there were 24 bovine deities, that's just the big name ones, the ones that we're absolutely sure are bovine deities. But there's a lot more than that in all likelihood. So, but the reason why they chose the bovine was because Aaron needed to reincarnate Yahweh, basically bring him back from the dead. Okay? So there isn't a lot of deities that you can bring back from the dead in a meaningful way. Okay? There's very few deities where, say, even in Egyptian culture, where he's dead and he's back in the land of the living. Okay, Osiris doesn't fit here. Okay, deities die. Yeah, in ancient Egypt they do. Osiris is dead.
things are
They can starve to death. They can get old and senile. Yeah, they can be ignored to death. Yeah. So yeah, deities do die. Uh, but um, in say um in Sinai, what Aaron needed was a way to bring Yahweh back to life. Wouldn't work with Osiris. Osiris is dead. Osiris remained dead. One of the things that modern skeptics don't understand about Osiris is Osiris died and he remained dead. He just became the god of the underworld, the god of the dead. Okay, ruler of the underworld. Okay, but he's still dead. Dead, dead. Dead, 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 dead. Okay? So, um, so Aaron couldn't use Osiris for this because Osiris just was another dead deity. He had to use a particular deity where, say, Yahweh got to be reborn as a living idol. Okay? Hence the son of Hassat. It's really the only myth where in Egyptian myth where that does this. So that's one of those things that I think it wasn't just that it was a cow deity, even though everyone would have recognized cow deities who were among the Israelites because it's an agrarian culture, but in this particular case, he needed this particular legend to get Yahweh out of the minds of the Israelites as being dead. So I think that there was a really strong methodological reason why Aaron chose what he did. Okay, Mama says our family's turning in early this week. Grace and peace to all. And Falk smash the like button. Good night, Mama. It was good to have you here. Glad you could join us. Thank you very much. You might one thing you might want to check the Discord. The latest version of Lord of Steel and Sky. She's not a beta tester. Milo. There's also the latest version of Egg Hunter 2 that's been posted. Okay, so there's some stuff on the Discord. So anyway, glad you could join us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a blessed night. Okay. Darkblade. Why is the benediction for the blessed dead Ma'aharu used for the god Re and Amenhotep the Fourth's praenomen? Okay, I would have to look Amenhotep the Fourth. Let me just take a look at let me just pull up his praenomen here and just take a look. Then I might be able to answer that. But I can't do that without the text in front of me, so look at Beckerath here. Books. Egypt. And I need to look at Beckerath. Beckerath's Königsnomen has the list of all the royal names. So it's the go-to source for this. Takes a moment to fire this up. And Amenhotep the Fourth. Roll all the way to Middle Kingdom here. Where are we here? It's Dynasty 5. I need into Dynasty 12. Yeah, it's 14, 18, 12. All right, and I need most of the first. Okay, where is that? Why am I not having that? It's 13. Why am I not finding Amenemhat the fourth? Messes, Mosret, Antihotep. How odd. Not listed. Maybe I can find it elsewhere. Alright, he's not in Bekkerath. Odd. He's not in Bekkerath. Got some lacuna there. Alright, let me see if I can find it elsewhere. Amenemhat the fourth. And fourth. You can find a cartouche somewhere. Okay. Mahiru. Ray. Okay. Ray is true of voice. Alright. Now I know what's going on. Okay, so it reads Ma'aharu Ray. Okay, Ray is in what's it called now? Is in the honorific transposition position. So what does Ma'aharu mean? Okay, it means true of voice. Speaks truly. Okay. Now, the reason this is used as blessed dead is because it's sometimes Ma'aharu literally means true of voice. The idea here is that dead people can't lie. Okay? Dead people only say the truth. A dead spirit won't lie to you. This is an Egyptian belief. So, if you're dead, you can only speak the truth now. So, now there's at that point when it says Ra, Ma'aharu Ray, Ra is true of voice. Ra speaks the truth. So, it does not necessarily mean in every case blessed dead. It really means tells the truth. Okay? So true of voice. True of speech. So in the case here of Ra, using the Ma'aharu in, say, the praenomen of Amenemhat IV, that's sort of what's going on there. So it's not that it's not saying that Ra is dead. So it's not saying Ra is the blessed dead. It's not saying that. It's saying he speaks truly. So that's what it means here. And that's what it even means in, say, when it's used, say, for behind people's names to indicate they're dead. Is they're dead, so they're speaking truly. So that's what's going on here. Hope that helps. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. All right, next one here is from Space Peanut for $5 Canadian. Thank you for the super chat. Hermeneutics is hard. Yes, it is. Especially early chapters of Genesis. How is it possible to determine what info is factual history versus ancient hyperbole or metaphor? Really, really hard. And even those are not the only options. Okay? You got factual history and hyperbole, like you mentioned, and metaphor. You also got mythohistory, which is the idea is that it's some history and that has been mythologized to analogize it for, say, within the drama of, say, ritual and the god. So it's not your only options. Hermeneutics is hard. And when you talk about the early chapters of Genesis, it's really, really difficult unless you understand that it's discussing the framework for sacred and profane space and early Israelite ritual. the first, say, 11 chapters of Genesis is all about setting the foundation that will be used in the tabernacle ritual. Okay? So the so we have to keep in mind when we talk about, say, Genesis, there's going to be, you're going to always have to look for that ritual understanding in Genesis, those early 11 chapters of Genesis, just to understand what the meaning is. Like, for example, people get caught up in things such as, was the flood global or local? That's the wrong question. That's really not what the flood narrative is about. The flood narrative is about sacralizing converters and the conversion of profane things to sacred things. Okay? So making, say, things such as sacrifices holy and worthy for giving to God. So things such as, say, the Garden of Eden isn't so much about, say, leaving paradise or the first humans, as much as it is about how sacred and profane space originally got divided and why that's important. So there's a lot that that's going on in the early chapters of Genesis that you kind of you need that background information for in order to do the hermeneutical work. It's very difficult because the early chapters of Genesis are so dependent upon, say, the ancient Near Eastern culture, the ritual culture that sort of predicates the tabernacle. And all of the tabernacle stuff is going to become predicated upon those early chapters of Genesis. So that's the foundation for that later ritual work. Things such as libation offerings, burnt sacrifices. The fact is that the first burnt sacrifices were done by Noah. Okay, he does the first olah, the burnt offerings. The whole idea of good ritual practice ends up in good results. There's lots of that stuff going on. The whole idea of image of God being, say, idols of Yahweh, the precincts of the temple, 3 precincts of the temple, 3 spaces that God prepares and then fills with life. So there's a lot of this going on in the earliest chapters of Genesis. So you really do need a good solid foundation in, say, the history and ritual practice of the ancient Near East in order to understand what's happening in those early Genesis chapters. Again, for the original audience for whom that was written for, this would have been obvious. This would have been absolutely obvious to those Israelites, because that was their world. Ritual practice was their world. It's not our world. So there's some we do need to keep in mind that we cannot impose our world upon their world. Their world operates by rules of ritual, magic, deities, little spirits running around all over the place causing trouble. That's their world. Ours is a world of materialism, accounting, science, engineering, machines, things that they can't even imagine. And likewise, stuff that we can hardly imagine from their world too. So you have to sort of get into their mind in order to understand what's being said in those early chapters. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Messianic Talmud, again for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Was the Egyptian capital at Cantir or Thebes during the reign of Ramses II and the Exodus? It was at Cantir. Okay. The last king of Dynasty 19 to rule at Thebes was Seti the First. The Egyptian capital is moved to Qantir early in the reign of Ramses II. I mean, really early, like the first year or two. So once Seti's dead, he's already moving to Qantir and building up his capital there, and it makes a lot of sense, because what Ramses II's move here is to reestablish his power base. Okay, there was a lot of friction between Seti the First and the Theban priesthood. A lot of friction. So, hey Slammer, how's it going? Good to see you here. So there's a lot of friction between the Theban priesthood and the early Ramessides. So, particularly Seti the First. And Ramses II had enough of it. So, at that point, he moved the whole court and capital from Thebes to Qantir. And it was basically a way of him thumbing his nose at the Theban priesthood. So by the time the Exodus rolls around in the 25th regnal year of Seti of Ramses II, Qantir is firmly established as capital of Egypt. So, hope that helps. Thank you for the super chat. Very much appreciated. All right, next one here is again from Messianic Talmud for $10. Thank you for the super chat. If Ramses II is believed to have fathered over 100 children, it was believed to be 52 children. Okay, why would the loss of a single child, even if firstborn, be significant enough to release the Israelites? It's because of who that child was. Okay, that firstborn was Amenhotep Kopshef. He was in his mid-20s. He was chief diplomat of Egypt. He was a man of power and responsibility. Okay. This was not a child that died. Okay. This was a powerful prince in his own right. Extremely powerful prince. He was Ramses II's right-hand man. Ramses had his viziers, like Pacer. But Amenhotep Kopshef was basically could have been his prime minister in all effective terms. Okay? Ramses II depended on Amenhotep Kopshef to go out and deliver his orders, keep his viziers in line. He was essentially Ramses II's enforcer. He was his enforcer, his chief diplomat. Ramses II leaned heavily on Amenhotep Kopshef for the administration of Egypt. Okay? So, when Amenhotep Kopshef dies, it's a key man position. It's a key man position. So, as the key man position, you know, that's an important position to lose. Okay? It's almost like a head of state dying. Or say like if in say a British system. You know, you got the king and you got the prime minister. It's like a prime minister dying. Okay? The king's still in charge, but the death of the prime minister is now causing chaos. So Gandalf the Base says it would be like the Allies losing a major general during a D-Day. Certain individuals do carry a lot of thought power. Yeah. Amenhotep Kopshef was a very, very powerful man. He was 25, but he all had incredible amounts of responsibility for somebody his age. As I said, chief diplomat of Egypt. He negotiated the treaty between Egypt and the Hittites. He was responsible. He was okay. Put it this way: uh, if Ramses II is Palpatine, Amon Kopchev is Darth Vader. He's the enforcer. So yeah, he's the enforcer for Egypt. Now he was not just, and I don't want to paint this too much as in he wasn't disliked. Okay, quite the opposite. Okay, or more like Tarkin. Yeah, he could be like Tarkin. But here's the thing about Amon Kopchev: he was well liked, charismatic. He wasn't like his father. Okay, which is why him and his father worked so well together. Um, uh, Ramses II was very rash, very hasty, could anger quickly. Amon Kopchev was apparently very gregarious, very charismatic, very diplomatic. He could get people to do things by his charisma. A man of those skills could wield incredible power in the Egyptian bureaucracy, not by force, just by influence. Yeah. Yeah, like the current King of England versus his son. Yeah, William's much more charismatic than Charles III. Yeah. But here's the thing, I mean, unlike Ramses II, who was born a commoner, Amon Kopchev was born in royalty. So, he was the best of the best. So, so, Slamarin says, was Amon Kopchev the one who died during Moses' time? Yeah, I think so. He dies in the 25th regnal year, or somewhere around then, and that's when that's where we expect the Exodus to be, is in that time frame of the 25th regnal year, mid Dynasty 19. So, the next royal prince doesn't really, the next crown prince doesn't die until something like the 52nd regnal year. So Amon Kopchev is the man. So, but yeah, he was apparently he probably, to be honest, Amon Kopchev probably would have made a great king. From all the signs, he probably would have made a great king. As I said, he was charismatic, he was diplomatic, he could get people to do things just by charisma and influence. People were more than happy to do things for him. Yeah, not like his father. More steady, too. He was a lot wiser. He did go on some military campaigns, but really at the end of his towards the end of his life, there was no need for him to go on military campaigns. The last military campaign in Egypt from Egypt was in the 18th regnal year, and Amon Kopchev was still alive in the 18th to at least the 23rd regnal year, or I should say maybe the 20th regnal year. So he outlived the last military campaign easily, because the treaty with the Hittites is negotiated, I believe, around year 21. So he did go on military campaigns. As I said, he very charismatic leader. Soldiers willingly followed him. His colleagues liked him. You know, very, very much, as I said, the charismatic young prince. Ryzen Draco says, I saw an article that Ramses II had arthritis and few other things. Would this explain why he wasn't at the Reed Sea incident? It could be. Um, there's like several reasons that might explain why he wasn't there. Okay, arthritis could be one. He was already in his 50s at the time of the Reed Sea incident. So, while there were some people, some generals that rode chariots into their old age, Ramses doesn't appear to be one of them. Yeah, it would have been a chariot ride would be pretty rough for a guy with arthritis. So Ramses probably Ramses was not really an active campaigner in late into his life. Not like Tutmosis III or even Merneptah. So he so that's one possibility. There's other possibilities too. For example, he might have just decided at one point not to go. I mean, they would have done a stop at Charu, and not being sure where the Israelites were exactly, he might have just sent out his army ahead of him. Because they didn't have reliable intelligence. So there's other possible reasons. His chariot could have broke. There's any possible number of reasons could explain why he wasn't there. But the fact is he wasn't there. So, thank you very much for the question. Okay, next one here is from Billy Nyungen for $5. Thank you very much for the super chat. Good evening, Dr. Falk. Well, good evening, Billy. How do Christians best apply Joshua's conquest in life? Ooh, that's a tough one. Well, I mean, he did act on faith, and he did trust in the Lord. So, okay, I'm going to take this from the haystack. His skull has haystack says his skull, him referring to here, out here, Koshev, has a large fracture, but I'm not sure if that was healed or not. That is not, we're not sure if that's his skull. Okay. I think Kent Weeks's dig did a really disservice. Okay. When they reported that skull. The team that excavated KV5 found a bunch of bones in a pit at the entrance of KV5. Okay, so these bones are not found in C2. Not even close to being found in C2. They're found in a pit near the entrance. The skull is of a man in his 20s. Okay, that much we know. The report from the news press report, and it's not even a formal archaeological report, but the news article has them saying, well, it maybe, could be, possibly, maybe, possibly could be the skull of Romani Koshev. Yeah, could be. Yeah, this is, I mean, could you, Mr. E, see this anymore? And all they found was a skull. Okay, the rest of the bones belong to other people. 4 individuals. It's 4 individuals in that pit. But only it's one skull. Okay, the skull's completely separate from the other four individuals. Okay. So we don't know if that belonged to Amenhir Koshev. It could have belonged to one of his brothers. Easily. Okay? Because after he died, another brother took, and then you could have other brothers die after that. Okay. And then, it might not even belong to one of Ramses II's children, because frankly, other people were burying bones, their deceased relatives, in these tombs too. So, So the whole identification of the skull of Amenhotep Khopshef is so shaky. I mean, it's so thin. I mean, the only thing that ties this skull to Amenhotep Khopshef is it's a 25-ish-year-old man, 20 man in his 20s, and it was found in the pit in KV5. Not in any of the tombs in KV5. Just the pit.
Not even.
So not even. Okay? Now, it is important to point out, too, that Amenhotep Khopshef had his own tomb as well. It is a priest, it's an assumption that his body was moved from his own tomb into KV5. Okay? That's an assumption. It's not a fact. We don't know if his body was actually moved into KV5. Possibly, it could be. But again, it could be. But before KV5 was built, Amenhotep Khopshef had started his own tomb. And we presume, at least initially, he was buried in his own tomb. Now, it is possible that his body was disinterred and then moved to KV5, but we're not sure. So, it's quite possible that Ramses II started KV5 because of the death of Amenhotep Khopshef, and basically thinking that, yeah, I got 52 children, I'm going to need to find places to bury them. You know, let's just make this a family tomb. So, but yeah, we have no evidence, almost no evidence to associate that skull with Amenhotep Khopshef. It's just, as I said, the evidence is so thin, and there's no. I don't think they've even done genetic tests on that skull to even see if it's related. I mean, that would answer at least if it was one of Ramses II's children. So, yeah, and they got teeth, so they could do a DNA extraction from one of the teeth, and then do a genetic test with Ramses II, but they haven't done that yet. So, who knows? Who knows? All right, next one here is from Billy Ningen for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Would it be best to argue that the belief in high Christology already appeared in the New Testament, but Nicaea put that belief into formula, not originated? Yeah, that's fair. It's very clear that the New Testament has a high Christology. Sorry, it has a high Christology. High Christology is the idea. And let's explain the difference between high Christology versus low Christology. High Christology is the belief that Christ was God at the incarnation. Okay, so Christ incarnated as the God-man. Okay, so that's what's meant by high Christology. He was already God at the incarnation. Low Christology is the idea that Christ was just an ordinary human being that was so good and so holy he became God, or like God. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a thing. So, I think it's very, very clear that the New Testament supports a high Christology. From both the incarnation scenes, like in Luke, you find it even in Mark, which is said to be the least high Christological of the Gospels. You can see it in Mark, where, very, very early on, he's doing these first order miracles. So, it definitely appears in the New Testament, and I think Nicaea just formulated it, but they definitely didn't originate it. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciate it. You also see say Ante-Nicene Fathers a lot of the ante-Nicene fathers extol a high Christology. The church fathers are you basically um, believe in a high Christology. They don't. I mean, you look at the early church fathers, the ante-Nicene fathers, and they don't believe in a low Christology. They don't. I mean, um, that becomes too associated with the Ebonite heresies and that sort of thing. So they're going to basically double down on high Christology. So guys like Irenaeus, Polycarp, they're going to go all in on high Christology. So hope that helps. Thank you for the super chat. Ryan Cohenkamp asks, so is that an award for the book or for the author? He's talking about this award that I received in the mail on Monday for Reliquary of the Dead. It is an award for the book, because it's the book that's judged, not the author. It is my award because I'm the author and I earned it. Okay. But it's an award for the book. Okay. Hope that helps. Thank you for asking. Okay, next one. Big Destiny for $5. Thank you for the super chat. I wanted to use the money that I would normally tithe and donate it to a local food bank. Do you think that this is acceptable? It's acceptable if you are not associated with a church already. Okay? Here's how it works. Here's how tithing is supposed to work. The tithe goes to your local church. Okay? That's where your tithe goes. Anything above your tithe is called an offering. Offerings, so basically, you've got the tithe, that goes to your local church, that's to support their ministry. The offerings are then above and beyond your tithe for parachurch ministries. So you would donate them to your local food bank. You would donate them to, say, other ministries, like, for example, Ancient Egypt in the Bible. But that's what you would do. Is your tithe goes to your church, your offerings go to other ministries, and your local food bank would be one of those other ministries. Okay, so tithe goes to the church, offerings go to the food bank or any other ministry you'd like to support. So I hope that clarifies things. Thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciate it. Andrew Graham goes, who's judging the authors? Okay. Well, I can tell you who's judging the books, which is other authors, other media experts. Every literary contest has a panel of judges. Sometimes it's former contest winners. In this particular contest, they have a wide range of people who do it. One of the judges was Don Bluth, the animator, the guy who did I think it was The Rescuers, who animated The Rescuers, or the director of that, or writer of that. So there's a lot of these have say media experts, publishers, editors, that sort of thing, who do the judging. So people who know something about literature. Okay. Next one here is from Vape Memes for $10 Canadian. Okay. Hey, Dr. Falk, do you think the similar wording in Exodus 4:19 and Matthew 2:20 was intentional or coincidental? Also, I just watched Life of Brian for the first time minutes before your stream, so I'm on to you. Yeah, I didn't exactly hide it. Okay, next one. Okay, so let's bring up the Bible and let's talk about Exodus 4. Exodus 4:19. It says, "Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, uh, go back to Egypt, for all the men who are seeking your life are dead." Okay. Then Matthew 2:20. "Arise and take the child and his mother. Go into the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead." Um, yeah, there's some similarity there in the wording. Was it intentional? I don't know. Could be. I I mean, I think most Bible commentaries would look at the two and say, yeah, there's a similarity there before between Exodus 4:19 and Matthew 2:20. I mean, it's both these are, say, divine revelations. So yeah, okay. Uh, it's probably intentional. Probably intentional. I don't think it's necessarily coincidental here, but yeah, yeah, I think there's a similarity in wording. Hope that helps. Thank you for the super chat. Very much appreciated. And next one here is from uh, Common Lurker for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Do you have an opinion on Zach from what your pastor didn't tell you? Yes, I do. His attitude towards Wes Huss have rubbed me the wrong way, and some other things. Oh, I'm not surprised. Uh, yeah, he's not exactly welcome here. Okay. Um, dude can be a real dirtbag sometimes. So, yeah, I don't like Zach, personally. Um, I mean, he's threatened to plagiarize some of my ideas. I mean, he said to my face once that, "Oh, you haven't published this? Well, I'm just gonna publish it and claim the credit for it." Oh yeah, that's nice, dude. Well, and I think the dude has some nerve. I mean, Zach has some nerve accusing Wes Huff of plagiarizing a Twitter tweet when the guy has threatened to plagiarize other people himself. Um, um, the guy's a snake. The guy is a complete snake. Um, he will try to plumb you for information and then mock you behind your back with his atheist friends. So I don't like the guy one bit. I don't like the one guy one bit, and I'm quite open about that. Um, he loves cozying up to guys like Kip Davis. He likes to cozy up to guys like Kip Davis, Dan McClellan. He likes to be close friends to those guys. But if you help the guy out, he'll just like stab you in the back. So, um, I think Zach's a total dirtbag. Okay, and he's not really welcome here. Okay, moving on. Common Lurker for $2. Thank you very much for the super chat. Can you elaborate on the archaeology from I? Okay. I don't have the latest paper from I. From what I understand, though, um, the latest and again, I don't have the details on this, so I can't really say too much as far as the latest results. The archaeology from I depends if you mean there's still some debate over which city is I. Okay, I think Atel is probably still the best candidate for I. Um, I think that Telemaktir is not a good candidate for I. I think it's a terrible candidate for I. As much as ABR still likes it as it, basically that's ABR's preferred candidate for I think Telemaktir is a terrible candidate. But it's hard to get past that because they do twist the data. And in fact, for example, Telemaktir, they found a fire pit, and they sort of exaggerated that into a destruction layer. And there's no destruction layer at Telemaktir that's late Bronze Age. Okay, either 1 or 2. So, I just I don't see Telemaktir is a viable candidate for I. Now, Atel still is. Atel still is. Now there was a late Bronze 1 occupation at Atel. There was also a late Bronze. They did find late Bronze 2 Iron Age 1 artifacts and objects at Atel. So so if they did find a destruction layer that's late Bronze 2, that would probably seal the deal as at Atel as being, say, the biblical eye. Andrew Grimm says Eye's location remains a mystery. Yeah, we're still not sure. We still don't have that smoking gun. Okay. About the only thing I'm kind of sure about is Telemaktir is not Eye. But that still leaves open, is Atel Eye? If Atel has that destruction there, or there's the other possibility too. Did Atel have site leveling? If Atel had site leveling, that would explain the late Bronze 2B Iron Age 1 artifacts, but on a destruction layer. And if you have site leveling at Atel, then that's a then that would be evidence that Atel is I. So we're still up in the air about the archaeology of I, because we're not exactly sure which site it is. So hope it helps. Thank you very much. Super chat, very much appreciated. All right, Sentinel Apologetics for $10 Australian. Good to see you here, Rob. Habibi David. You've been hanging out too much with your Islamic friends. Okay, Quran says Satan whispers. I'm sure he does. Never a snake. Okay. This makes sense if derived from Syriac theology, since they read Nahas as Lahas. Can you clarify with Ecclesiastes 10:11? All right, let's look at Ecclesiastes 10 verse 11. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 verse 11. If the serpent bites before being charmed, there is no profit for the charmer. Okay, let's take a look at the Hebrew. If Yeshek, if bites on the hash, so a serpent bites with whispering. Not. Okay. Okay, so if the serpent bites when not charmed, lahash. Yeah, the hush is the whispering, the charm here. So, and not the charm. Okay, so here's the thing. Nahash is not lahash. Okay? Not the same. But, so there's definitely the Nahash, which is the serpent, and the Lahash, and actually it's Lahas. It's not Lahash, it's Lahas. So there's some difference here in the vowels too. Okay, so yeah, I don't think you should read Nahas as Lahash. Lahas. Okay? So I think that's an issue here. It's kind of like saying, "Oh, cannibal and cannabis are the same thing." It's like, no, they're spelled different. Okay? Look, if you're stuck in a forest of cannabis versus a forest of cannibals, you're going to have a very different experience, okay, between the two. They're not the same. I would much rather be lost in a forest of cannabis than a forest of cannibals. Just saying. Yes, they're different by an L and an S. Okay? But you're likely to come out of a forest of cannabis alive. You might be high if you misbehave, but you're likely to leave it alive. A forest of cannibals, you're not likely to leave alive. Just saying. Spelling matters. Spelling matters. So, if they are reading Nahas as Lahas, yeah, they're just twisting the text. Okay? They're just twisting the text to get what they want. Sorry, Nahas, Nahash, and Lahas aren't the same. Not even close. Thank you for playing. Okay. Next one. All right. Next one here, some Sentinel Apologetics for $10. Thank you for the super chat. Basically, does snake sound similar to whisper lahas? No, not really. No ancient Semitic speaker would have confused the two. Yeah, there would have been probably some alliteration, but alliteration is not confusion. If so, does the sound of these two types words create a type of wordplay? Sure, it does. Yeah, that's very common. If so, it seems Quran assumed Lahas was in the Eden story. Yeah, that's because the Quran's whacked. You can't expect coherence from the Quran. That's just silly talk. That's crazy talk, man. Coherence from the Quran. No, you're not gonna get any sort of coherence out of Quran. No. Yes, in Ecclesiastes 10:11, there's wordplay. There absolutely is wordplay in Ecclesiastes, but that's because the people who wrote Ecclesiastes, or the person who wrote Ecclesiastes, was literate. Okay, it was literate. You do have wordplay between serpent, nahas, and charmed, lahas. That's wordplay. That's alliteration. That's a literary device. You would expect literary devices from literate people. If they confuse nahas and lahas, the Quran was written by illiterate people. People who couldn't understand literary devices. That's why it's whacked. Oh boy. Slammer. So true, it is whacked. Yeah. Common Lurker says, "Thank you, Dr. Falk. I appreciate the answers, and they did help." Awesome. Glad to hear that. Thank you very much again for those super chats, and blessings upon you too. Okay. Grim, that would be like untrained Bible translators. Yeah. Okay, next one here. Sentinel Apologetics for $2 Australian. I've survived our infamous poison ivy experiment. What, you decked the halls with poison ivy? Why did you do that? Don't have enough misery in your life? Well, tell me how that went for you. How bad did you break out? Okay, next one here. See here. What? Oh yeah, we could put. You know what? If I was to plant that on the balcony, I don't think I would want to plant poison ivy on the balcony. Now, stinging nettle. A stinging nettle, yeah, I'd plant that all the time. Stinging nettle is delicious. At least you can eat stinging nettle. Foodie section. You can't eat poison ivy because you can eat stinging nettle. Are we at the end already? We're at the end of the super chats. Wow, it's only 11 o'clock. Dang. Well, didn't see that coming. Okay. Night Owl asks, did Shawshank reference the House of Devote? I'd have to look that one up. I don't think Shawshank references it, but he does talk about the House of the King, the Beit Melech. He also talks about some like towns that are well established in Judah, like Beit Shemesh. So um, there are several references to Judite towns. So I'm not really sure though if he. I'd have to look that up in the references to find that out. So, anyway, that's all. So do we have any non super chats? Or were we the end? The end of all things.
Oh.
Okay.
Working on
I see one here from Risen Draco I want to take. Um, he says, do you know the article off the top of my head about late Bronze Age and Iron Age artifacts at 8 Tel? That was actually in the original um, field report. Let's see, what was it now? They don't describe it to, their dating's kind of off. But they ascribe it to 1200 BC. So, let me just see if I can find the article, the book here. It's actually the book on 8 Tel. Let's see. Callaway. It's in Callaway. It's an early bronze citadel and lower city at 8 Tel. I don't remember what the exact page it's on. Do I even have a... Please tell me I actually... Take a moment to pull it up, even if it's there. Yeah, this will take forever. So it's in that it's in Joseph Callaway's book. He doesn't describe it to late Bronze Age 2 and Iron Age 1, but what he says is it dates to 1200 BC. 1200 BC is late Bronze 2B, Iron Age 1. So take that as for what it is. Okay? So that's where it's in. It's in Callaway's report. Okay, next one here. I did see a couple member questions come in. Scott Warthen asks a member question. Which eschatology itinerary are you leaning towards? Pre, post, Ami, premillennialism, millennialism, literally, figuratively, how much preterism? Okay. My eschatology is post-tribulation, historic, premillennial. Okay, that's my eschatology. I don't like preterism. Just cannot stand it in any of its forms. I don't like partial preterism. I don't like full preterism. I think full preterism is heresy. It's just outright heresy. But I don't really care for partial preterism either. But so I tend to be a futurist. I am post-tribulation, pre-millennial, historic premillennial, not dispensational premillennial. Okay, so I hope that helps. PA888 for 1999. Thank you for the super chat, and he says he'd like to sponsor a question.
Hello.
Okay. Oh, okay. 10, what was it? 10:55. I'll take that one though, because we know who that is. Okay. What is your opinion with the kneeling figure associated with Jehu on the black obelisks? Do you think it represents Jehu himself or an Israelite servant tribute bearer on his behalf? I think it's Jehu. Okay. It's the obelisk has actual captions. Now, here's one of the things you have to understand about the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Almost every picture I've seen of this gets this wrong. Okay? They always show the caption on the bottom of the register. The caption on Assyrian reliefs is always on top. Okay? So if they take the picture correctly, the caption's on the top, and then you've got the picture of Jehu below it. So it's not the same as how we do captions. We do captions on the bottom. They did captions on the top. Okay? So that's a cool little fact. It does say it's Jehu bowing before Shalmaneser III. Okay? So I don't think it's a tribute bearer. I think it is Jehu. That's because Shalmaneser did require his vassals to make appearances before him on occasions. So, okay. So, so that's really what I think is going on there. So I don't think that's just a tribute bearer. I think that's actually Jehu. Because that's a big deal. That's it. That's the way Assyrian kings asserted their power. Is they would have their vassals on occasion travel to them to present tribute. It was also a way of them, say, assuring loyalty. Okay, you're loyal because you're leaving your comfort zone and showing up to the king, and you're bowing before him to present all this tribute. Okay, so so that's what's going on there. So I hope that helped. Thank you very much for the question. I want to thank PA888 for sponsoring that question. Very, very much appreciate it, and thank you for that generous super chat. Okay, Scott Worthington says, post-tribulation refers to a Christian eschatology belief that the rapture, gathering of believers, and Christ's second coming happen together at the end of the Great Tribulation. Yes, it does. Okay? Yeah. So, basically, it's like this, okay? It's the separation of the wheat and tares. It's the separation of the wheat and tares. Here's what I've come down to thinking as far as my thoughts on eschatology, as far as, quote, the rapture goes. I think that the rapture is largely misunderstood as not the collection of believers, but the gathering of the tares. We see this, for example, in the parables of Christ, where you have the sower and the wheat and the tares. Okay? Sower goes, he sows some wheat, and an enemy comes at night and sows tares among them. And the servants panic, go, Master, Master, what do we do? Your enemy has come at night and sowed tares among your wheat. Do we rip him up? And the master goes, No, no, no. Wait for the harvest. And when the harvest is done, the angels will collect the tares and burn them. And then the wheat will be gathered into the storehouse. Okay? So given that order of and you see this order all the time in the parables. It's gather the unbeliever for summary punishment, and then the believers. Okay? So it's the idea that there's the post-tribulation idea is that there is summary punishment, and that's the rapture. The rapture is not the gathering of believers, it's the gathering of the unbelievers for the great winepress of the Lord, the great squish, the battle of Megiddo, the great feast of the Lamb. It goes by many, many names. Okay? And you see this, call out the birds of the air, for we are about to witness the great feast of the Lamb. Those are vultures. They're calling vultures. It's not a pretty picture. It's not a happy thought. No, this is not Left Behind. Sorry, Jerry Jenkins. This is not Left Behind. The two are in the field. One will be taken, one will be left behind. The one that's taken, they're going to the great wine press. For the great squish. Okay? So, it's uh Scott Worth and says, "Oh, separating the wheat from the chaff sounds kind of like a parable moderated form of dispensationalism." It's not. It's right from the biblical text. It has nothing to do with dispensationalism. Yes, you are missing the core concept completely. Um,
But most people do.
yeah, yeah, most people do miss this, so you're not alone in not understanding this.
People have been teaching left behind.
Yeah, people have been teaching, say, the Tim LaHaye dispensational pre-tribulationalism now for about 100 years, and it's sort of rotted away people's brains when it comes to actually understanding the symbolism involved here.
They're
So
so into arguing pre-trib, post-trib,
yeah,
they miss what the actual words.
yeah, they do. No, I mean, you look at, say, all the symbolism in Revelation, as well as the parables of Christ, as far as eschatology are concerned, and they dovetail nicely. They are absolutely compatible with each other. But you do have to take things in the order that the Lord has presented. And it's clearest in the Gospels. And once you understand the gospel approach to this, then the rest of it is just just sort of putting the rest together. It's just so, I mean, the separation, the parable of the wheat and the chaff have nothing to do with dispensationalism. Dispensationalism is the idea of ages of grace. That's what dispensational is. There was the idea of dispensationalism is that there's seven ages of grace. Each age has a different criteria for age of grace. Okay, so you have the age of law, which is supposedly Garden of Eden. The age of, the age of obedience, which is the Garden of Eden. There's an age of law, which is the Sinai covenant, and it just goes on and on and on with these various different criteria, which make no sense at all. Okay. In fact, many of the big dispensational schools have pretty much abandoned dispensationalism because it's a crock. And it doesn't fit with say a proper reading of the Bible from its original languages. This is why, for example, Dallas Theological Seminary doesn't teach dispensationalism anymore in its Greek and Hebrew program. Its THM program doesn't teach dispensationalism anymore. They still teach it, I think, to some small degree in the English Bible department. But, the English Bible department at Dallas Theological Seminary never met a version of the Greek that they liked. Okay, so those teachers who teach in that department may not even be literate in Greek, Hebrew, or English. We won't go into that, but okay. So this has nothing to do with dispensationalism at all. Okay, so anything else we want to cover?
Did you want to answer Gabriel's? Would you consider?
1103. Okay, 1103. Gabriel Pro asked the question: would you consider writing a book, editing, or contributing to a work about the historicity of the Exodus? I've already contributed a chapter on the Exodus to what was it? The Baker's Backgrounds of the Old Testament book. So I have a chapter in there. They didn't exactly like my contribution that much, to be honest. The fact is that when I basically came out as a strong late dater, the editors just sort of screamed. The funny thing was when I wrote that chapter, I was told that I'd be given free reign to write whatever I want. And so, okay, I did great, fantastic. I get to write finally about the historicity of and the late Exodus view. And the editors flipped out. The editors flipped out. They said, I told them, hey, they said you can't write that. I said, why not? You told me I could write anything I want. And they said, well, we didn't think you'd write that.
But again, your book,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I had this problem too with, say, my book on the Ark of the Covenant, where I basically said, hey, I got to include dates here because, the Ark of the Covenant is in a certain historical context according to the iconography, and we can all that iconography can be dated, down to plus or minus 5 years. So, the editors had flipped out and goes, well, our early Exodus people are going to flip out over this. Okay, is that my problem? But they said, okay, well, we'll let you do it, but you have to explain your view on the Exodus. And it's like, oh, yeah, throw me in the briar bush. Don't throw me in the briar bush, please, please. It's like... So I ended up giving a little defense of the late Exodus date in my Ark of the Covenant book, and then they allowed me to use actual dates. And it was just like, okay. But I couldn't imagine. It's like, how do you write a book on Egyptology and dating iconography using the dates of kings? We all know when that iconography dates because it's all labeled by the dates of kings. It's like, we know the dates. We have the dates.
yeah, it's not a lack of evidence. It's a lack of.
Yeah. Please, Brer Fox. Yeah, that's about it. Please don't throw me in the briar bush, Brer Fox. Night Owl, I love that portion of your book. Yeah, the publisher made me do it, so that was even better. But if you know the reign of an Egyptian king, you know his dates, pretty much, because the chronology is that refined at this point. So it's like, you expect me to write a book naming kings but not the dates? What? That's not the way this works. Yeah. Okay, so absolutely we do have so then with that said, we'll get back to that question here. What was the question? I am working right now on a chapter for a book. Hopefully that will be given the green light by a publisher on the historicity of the Exodus. Okay? But there's still a lot of uncertainty of whether that project is going to come to fruition. Okay? The publisher I'm dealing with here is not convinced, can't really see the vision that I see for this book. So, it's the question is, am I going to make it through the publisher? If I'm going to make it past the publisher, then we'll get a green light here. If we don't, then it's just more issues. But yeah, I would say it's not a certain deal at this point. So, But we thought it was, yeah. But then the publisher said, I hate dealing with publishers so much. Yeah, by the time you get through all the loopholes, I mean, I love working with editors. I love working with editors. Editors can help me make books better. Publishers, not necessarily. So, so yeah, it's a lot of hassle to deal with a publisher, right up to the point where, I mean, as I say, working with the editors can be fine. I find that most of the editors I've worked with have been very hands off. Not a lot of them have get in the way. Um, and if you really, really believe in something, a editor will usually let you do it. Publisher, however, can be an issue. They did want me to take out a lot of my humor. Um, they were they were not always happy with my sense of humor. But we got most 90% of it in, so yeah. For some reason, Hendrickson did not like my joke about Christmas being a wealth redistribution scheme. I think Christmas is a wealth redistribution scheme. I mean, what? But they thought that might have been rubbed their audience the wrong way. Oh well. Okay, I see something come in right now from Sentinel Apologetics here. Uh, he says for $10 Australian, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for answering. I also found that the Septuagint has uh, Dithyismos in Ecclesiastes 10:11, and a lectionary on this refers to the Desert Fathers, also using the Greek term regarding Satan tempting Eve. Okay. Yeah. I'm not an expert on Septuagint Greek, but yeah, sure. The Hebrew is pretty explicit anyway. So okay, awesome. All right. So anything else? All right, are we done for the night? Maybe we're done for the night. Ooh, leave early.
Uh,
Do I get to leave early? I think we covered Shawshank already.
uh, back at 10.
Which one? Okay, I'll get the one from Rob. Rob for $5. Thank you for the super chat. And he, the monk, Hypericius, said again, the serpent Ophis drove Eve out of paradise by whispering Cythremus to her. Okay. Okay, now that's definitely some Greek going on here. Serpent Ophis. Okay, that's that one I'm familiar with. Now, I am going to question here for that statement. That when I see something like that, I think Gnosticism. Okay? There is there was a sect of Gnostics called the Ophites. And they use this term Ophis to reference the serpent specifically. And they believed that the serpent had secret knowledge. Okay? So they would be, this serpent would be whispering that secret knowledge to Eve to pass it on. Okay. Parcel tongue. Yeah, you're not that far. You're not that far off. Was that question already asked earlier? The Mount Ebel amulet?
Uh,
Okay, Daniel, you know the rules. We were, well, I know it doesn't matter if we ignore. We got the time to take it, but just a heads up. Well, let me finish with Rob here first, and then move on. Okay. So essentially, when I see this statement, the serpent Ophis drove out the ear by whispering to her. That just strikes me as Ophite Gnosticism. That's what comes to my mind. Is Ophite Gnosticism. So, um, so uh, so anyway, I hope that that helps. Thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Okay, so his bad. All right, we'll take it. We'll honor it. All right. So, Daniel Lowry asks, "Did you see Craig Evans promoting the Mount Ebel curse amulet?" Yes. Craig Evans needs to stay out of Old Testament archaeology. He needs to stay out of it. Um, how do I say this? He's a New Testament scholar. That's his thing. Craig Evans is a New Testament scholar. That's his wheelhouse, the New Testament. He doesn't know anything about the Old Testament, but he's been pontificating a lot about archaeology of the Old Testament recently, and he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, I know. I know he does not know what he's doing. And I saw him promoting the Mount Ebel curse amulet long after it's been discredited.
I mean, airplane's not.
Oh well, that was one of the things about the NAS this year. Nobody's talking about the Mount Ebel amulet anymore. It's been so thoroughly discredited at this point that not even Stripling's talking about it. Yeah, nobody's talking about it anymore. Just because it's that discredited. 2 years ago at the NAS when Peter Vanderveen gave his reading of the Mount Ebel curse amulet, everyone walked out of there going, "Oh, this is a joke. This is a complete joke." James Murray asks, "How is the Mount Ebel curse amulet discredited?" There's nothing on it. There's nothing on it. The scans are. Here's the thing: when they do those tomography scans, those X-ray tomography scans on lead amulets, you can really tell what's on them. It's really, really clear. Okay? There is absolutely nothing on the Mount Ebel curse amulet tablets. Nothing. You might be able to squint really, really hard and see an H. That's it. You might be able to see a humaniform H. That's it. There's nothing else. Everything else on there is pareidolia. Imagination. Yeah, it does look. I mean, a lot of people are thinking it's fishing weights. Oh yeah, it was totally like puppies in the clouds. Yeah, pareidolia. I mean, the first guy they had doing the translation, I mean, did crazy stuff, absolutely bonkers, crazy, uh, um, boustrophodons that were just all over the place, meandering like a ant on cocaine. Okay, but Peter Van der Veen's reading wasn't any better. It was just as bad. Um, it's just crazy how they try to keep this alive for so long. But this was we have to understand, for the NES and ABR, this was a winner take all thing. Okay, this is a winner take all proposition. So here's what's at stake. If they could read letters on that amulet, and those letters date to late Bronze Age 1A/B, then they can claim that the Mount Ebel site was early, basically was inhabited around 1400 BC, and thus claim the early Exodus date. The problem is that all the ceramic remains are against that. I happen to know the guy that has the catalog of all the ceramic remains that were found at Mount Ebel, and it's about 100 pages worth of material. He says there's no doubt that the site dates to late Bronze Age 2B, early Iron 1. So around circa 1200, not 1400. If Mount Ebel dates to the late Bronze 2B period, not 1A, what happens to the early Exodus date is it crumbles to dust. This is the final stand. This is, as I said, this is the winner-take-all position. This is the winner-take-all. They've put everything into that Mount Ebel curse amulet in hopes that they'll win this gamble. They'll win this gamble and winner-take-all proposition and come out victorious with the early Exodus date. But the problem is that looking at the Mount Ebel curse amulet has been completely discredited. Yeah, Keeps Learning says desperation. Yeah, that's what it is. It's desperation at this point. They've lost so many of these things now that, I mean, they've lost the Jericho thing, they lost the Hatzor thing, and now they've lost Mount Ebel. So, for the longest time, even after Lorenzo Nigro published his reports, they were still going on saying, "Oh well, there's no late Bronze 2B destruction at Jericho," and Nigro writes another paper in 2023. It goes, "Oh yes, there was." So yeah, they're done. For the longest time too, they were also saying, "Oh, there was a late Bronze 1A destruction at Hatzor," and the site supervisor is basically saying, "No, there isn't. It's not there. There's nothing there that's late Bronze 1A destruction." So they've lost so many of these things now that this thing's over, pretty much. This was their last chance. Scott Worthen says, the amulet is not the be-all and the end-all entirety of the early Exodus daters. It all sounds like desperation specific to ABR. Well, they keep losing this thing. And if they keep losing this thing, they resort to desperation tactics. They keep trying to shift this as much as they can within their sort of ideological purview, but it's just not looking good. James Murray, what was the highest carbon-14 dated material from cow sheep bones at Mount Ebel? About 1,200. The carbon-14 just came in the same span. So everything at the Mount Ebel site confirms late Bronze 2B, Iron Age 1. Everything. and it's all within a 75-year window. So it's not even a long window. I mean, here's the thing that we have to understand: sites that have a smaller occupancy are easier to date. This is one of the things. Like for example, Amarna was only in operation 15 years, so it's incredibly easy to date. Anytime you have a site that's, you would think that the longer somebody lives there, the harder it would be, or the longer somebody lives there, the longer harder it is to date. It's not true. It's the opposite. The shorter a period a site is occupied, the easier it is to date. God help us if we ever have to date Heliopolis. That site was in operation for 3,000 years. Incredibly difficult to date anything from Heliopolis. But Ebel, because it was such a short span of time, 50 to 75 years, incredibly easy to date. So, the carbon-14 material all dates to 1200 to 1150 BC. The ceramic remains are all late Bronze 2B, Iron Age 1. So yeah, this is a lose proposition for ABR at this point. Daniel Laurie says, it's disappointing given how interesting the Ebel site is. This seems to dominate the online discussion about it. Yeah, it is, kind of.
Well, that's the thing.
Oh, yeah, it's exactly. And frankly, that the curse amulet has sort of, because of the sensationalism. I mean, it really was. I mean, the publication was a joke. Okay. Well, they went to the press first, and that's always a bad sign. Before they went to the conferences, they went right to the newspapers. They used, say, Lanier's facilities to organize this great big news conference. And then they published a paper in this weird backwater journal. I mean, a low-tier journal. They didn't even publish it in an archaeology journal. They published it in a natural science journal. It was really bizarre. It's not something you would have. That sort of journal doesn't even have proper peer reviewers. So, yeah, the whole thing was kind of a circus. They had, but even with the fact that they didn't have great peer reviewers, a lot of their, they had tried to redate the ceramic typology to try to stretch it back to late Bronze 1A. And they must have had somebody on the peer review team that said, no. Because they took that out. I have an early copy of that paper plus the final published paper. Okay, because the early paper leaked. The early paper was leaked, and I happened to get a copy of it. There are some substantial difference between the early paper and the later one. The early one made some really sweeping claims about the ceramic typology that were just not so supportable. So they end up taking almost all of that out. So, yeah. Scott Worthington says, Shechem equals Mount Ebel. I was unaware, surprised. Mount Ebel overlooks Shechem. Okay? You have Mount Ebel and Mount Gerizim, and they both overlook Shechem. Shechem is kind of in the valley between the two. So, but Ebel is I mean, the fact is, it is a ritual site. It has altars. It has lots of Lots of sacrifices were done at Ebel. It is almost assuredly the um the ritual site of Joshua. We're almost I'd say 90%, 95% sure that that's the ritual site of Joshua, just because it's the only candidate for it. So um that is what I would say for that. It's just um the focus should be on the archaeology of the site. Yeah. And um and frankly, if they had published the Mount Ebel curse amulet as just a fishing weight, and a very interesting weight that they found there. And frankly, a fishing weight isn't even the only alternative. It could be a curtain weight, a clothing weight. They did have clothing weights. There's other alternatives too, but it's clearly a weight of some kind. And it's like, okay, they didn't get a positive result, they got a negative result. That's still a result. Yeah, we found this interesting lead artifact. It has no writing on it. The fact that they've got lead here is interesting. It's absolutely interesting. Publish that. That could have added to it instead of being this monstrosity of a distraction. But ABR does this all the time.
To them, the only thing.
Yeah. Yeah, ABR is just obsessed with the Exodus. And that colors their vision here. So if it doesn't have writing on it, why even call it an amulet? Because people are hopeful. I call it a fishing weight. I call it a weight. Fabric weight, fishing weight. We're not exactly sure the use.
And again, there are examples.
Yeah.
This isn't somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't a one-off. But here's the thing, it's been now named that. So, because because ABR and Stripling named it an amulet, it's now stuck. We're kind of stuck with it. Kind of like the Berlin pedestal. Here's another example from that ilk. Okay? The Berlin pedestal. It's not a pedestal. It's the base of a column. Okay? It's a column base. It's the base of a column that was used in a temple somewhere. It's not a pedestal. It's never used as a pedestal. It shouldn't even be described as a pedestal. It's not a pedestal. But because it was called a pedestal by Manfred Gorg, we're stuck with that now. Okay? It's really a misnomer to call it a pedestal. Because it was never used to support another item. It's used to support a column. What's this? Oh, Mount Ebel cursed amulet. It cursed its founder, huh?
He who tries to find writing.
He who finds writing here shall lose his career in ignominy. Good times. Good times. Okay, I think we're at the end of the questions here. So, I guess we get to call it an early night. So, nah, I don't want to really take that. All right. So I guess we got no other questions. We got no more foodie section, and we're done. So I think we're gonna call it a night here. So I get to go to bed early. And I'm not at all disappointed with that. So okay. Daniel, glad I caught the end. Well, I'm glad you could stay here. So, here's Rob. One last one. Rob, Sentinel apologizes for $5 Australian. Thank you very much for the super chat. A paradoxical choice. Deck the halls with poison ivy or Ebla curse tablet. Oh boy. That is a tough choice. Just a tough choice.
Definitely go for the poison ivy because you can see it at this.
Well, you could, yes. Poison ivy you could see from a distance. Ebla curse amulets, you will have to deal with lead. And lead is toxic. So they're both toxic in their own way. So, I don't know. That's a tough choice. But I don't know if I want to deal with that curse. So, I think I'll probably pick the poison ivy. Okay? Okay. Fun, good times. All right, I think we're going to call it here. Again, if you haven't already, please purchase, get this out here, the award-winning book, Reliquary of the Dead, and please leave a review on Amazon and Goodreads because those reviews really, really help us. We want to thank everyone who supported the channel tonight through your super chats. We do really, really appreciate it. And if you gave a gift to us through PayPal, thank you so very much because that helps keep the channel going. Also, want to thank our Patreon and our YouTube membership supporters because you guys keep us basically in the equipment. You guys keep the equipment repaired and basically in tip-top shape so we can come to you with these live streams. We also want to thank our regular member supporters, our channel subscribers who watch our videos, hit that like and subscribe button, and who share the URLs with other social media platforms. You guys get the message out there. With that said, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're glad you could be with us, and we'll see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible. Good night, everyone.